I'm Sunny Danforth, and my co-host every Wednesday, Don Anderson. How are you doing, Don?
Doing great. It's always a wonderful Wednesday with you, Sonny.
Well, I'll tell you, it's been the weather is changing. Boy, the weather is changing. But
Yeah, we
it's
got our
nice.
first major rainstorm today. It was awesome.
Well, I woke up this morning to snow on the Blue Mountains, and I heard up at
hmm
the top there was about 4 inches, and it was still snowing earlier this
hmm
morning. It's going to be short-lived, but
hmm
winter's coming.
I like it. I like it.
Well, the big news today is that we got a Speaker of the House.
Hey,
We have Congressman from Louisiana, and it
yes.
is Mike Johnson. And I'll tell you, the fourth time is the charm, and we got a Speaker.
Mhm. That's great. That
Well,
didn't take
it's
nearly as long as people thought, too.
right. And they didn't stay in session to just keep battling it out. They sounded like they kept going to um, private room, have their arguments and whatnot, and their secret ballot votes in
hmm
private, which I think that's probably pretty good. But you know what? He was elected unanimously by all Republicans. And
Wow.
so this is the first time since John Boehner in 2011 that a speaker
hmm
was elected with all of the seated, all of those that were on the floor.
hmm
So
Well, you can
I
usually
think
tell how
that
good. Yeah.
shows unity.
Well, you usually tell how good a candidate is by how loud the left brays against him. So if the New York Times, the Washington Post is blaring, he's like terrible and all that, you know he's fantastic. So,
Exactly. In fact, I was reading a little because I never heard of him before, as I'm sure a
mhm,
lot of Americans had never heard of him before. And he is a Christian, he's a
mhm,
lawyer and a constitutional lawyer, which in the times that we are, quite frankly, I
mhm,
think that is fabulous to have a
mhm,
constitutional lawyer be our Speaker of the House.
mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Because in an age where very few people know what the Constitution is, it's great to have somebody who does. So that's very cool.
Yeah, and I think as he negotiates with Democrats, because there's going to have to be some negotiations. I mean, it's the nature of the beast, right? Um, I Because of his knowledge of our Constitution, he might just go, no, this we're not doing
Mhm,
because it's unconstitutional. So,
mhm,
and he has the knowledge and the
mhm,
expertise to
to
have that argument.
mhm. Well, the central thing we face is this basic rule of law. The law is the law and needs to be followed. And if you want to change the law, there's a process for doing that, and we can do that process, but just make up the law based on how you feel, which is what the left does all the time. That's like not rule of law. Can't do that.
No, you can't. You can't. And so I listened to him speak today. He set the bar high of this is what we
Mhm,
want to get done. He's worked with Alliance Defending Freedom, and he has taken courses to the Supreme Court. And anyway, I think this is a great day for America that we have a speaker. It's taken 3 weeks and the fourth vote. And there
mhm.
I don't believe in the coincidences. I think this has happened for a reason.
Yep, I agree. That's awesome. Very good.
Yeah. Yeah. So congratulations. We have a Speaker of the House. Definitely. And then, well, speaking of representatives as well, we've got Representative Bowman who had pulled that fire alarm. He got misdemeanor charges. And that's all he got was basically a slap on the wrist. He says that he wasn't trying to stop the vote on the floor. Do I doesn't matter what I think, but I don't think so.
Mhm.
I think he did that totally intentionally, but he got a slap on the
Mhm.
wrist. He has to pay $1,000 fine and stay out of trouble for 3 months.
And in a vacuum, as awful as that sounds, it wouldn't be so bad. But when you realize we got people who've been in prison for 3 years for doing a lot less than that, shows you the degree of degradation we've seen in terms of the rule of law. It's applied one way to one set of people, another way to another set of people, and that just can't go on.
Well, you're absolutely right. It can't go on. You are absolutely right. And so we need to have one set of rules for everybody. We just need to follow our Constitution and have um, balanced judicial. The
All
law
points
applies
once
to
again to
everybody.
the lack of morality, the lack of virtue, the willingness to lie of our opponents. They're willing to do things that we're just not willing to do. Um, it's a sad fact, but it's true. I mean, how much more blatant can you get? This guy gets a misdemeanor, and you got people who've been in prison for 3 years for like basically protesting. It's like they didn't even pull the fire alarm, and they got 3 years in prison. It's
Yeah,
insane.
yeah. Well, it
Um,
is insane that it's not. It's not. He should have gotten more than just a little slap on the wrist and $1,000 fine. You know, and
no,
keep your nose
absolutely
clean for 3 days, 3 months.
right. Yeah.
Maybe he'll be removed from any
Mhm.
committees he's on. I don't know.
I seriously doubt it. You know, unless it's forced removal. This is a Orwellian as it gets, and this is straight out of Nikolai Ceausescu's playbook, right? Um, Punish your opponents, make the law, your law, not the law of the land. That's what they've done.
Yes, yes, and so something else that I've got here is, there's been a lot of investigations been ongoing despite not having a speaker. So I'm glad that things have continued on. Well, I saw this story today in PJ Media that Senator Grassley claims that the DOJ and the FBI terminated investigation into the dirty Biden family business to keep it quiet during the Trump impeachment. And I'll tell you, it's what we've known. And so this investigation used 40 confidential human resources and agents all over the country before being shut down during
Mhm.
Biden's run for the presidency.
Hmm.
This
Yeah,
is election interference.
yeah, it's pretty stunning.
Yeah, so it goes right along with what we were just talking about,
Mhm.
the two tiers of justice, but this is
Mhm.
election interference, and quite frankly, that type of thing is treasonous to
Mhm.
our nation, that we're not getting, and censorship to our
Mhm.
nation, that we're not getting the whole story, and we haven't had for
Mhm.
quite a while. You have to go search alternative news
Mhm.
sources to try to get a picture of everything that's going on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We pretty much reached a point where you can't believe anything that comes from the national press. You just can't. This is blatantly biased in every way. Um, I see no value in it, but it's caused a mistrust in all the key institutions of the country, and the key institutions of the country are worthy of mistrust. You look at how they behave too. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was something that Mike Johnson, our speaker, Mike Johnson, talked about today in his speech. Had the opportunity to be able to watch the floor vote and listen to his speech. I didn't want to listen to Hakeem Jeffries as he was talking,
Mhm.
but and he talked about that is how much Mike Speaker Johnson's talked about how much the American people are not trusting their confidence in legislators and agencies is really
Mhm.
down. And he's right. So I would say he understands the pulse of America and
Mhm.
where we're at.
Yeah, yeah. Well, just the whole vaccine episode. What a monumental lie. From the masking to the vaccines to everything to the safe and effective. I mean, it was neither safe nor effective. It's a question of whether how unsafe and how ineffective. That's really what the question is. And then lying in the aftermath, and then a refusal to fess up that, how long it's taken them to finally admit that it's not effective and finally admit that it is dangerous. It's just crazy. Um, and then they're still selling this stuff. It's unbelievable. And people are still dying.
Well, some are going $180. No, thank you. I think I'll just take my chances getting sick. And quite frankly, that's,
Yeah.
you know what? It's okay to get the flu. It's okay.
Yeah.
That's what our immune
Mhm.
systems are about. And
Oh yeah, it's they've managed to dupe the entire population or a huge percentage into thinking that there's something abnormal about getting the flu. Man, I called it today. Somebody's asking me if I'm going to get a COVID test. Why in the world a COVID test? What difference does it make? So what exactly am I going to do if it tests positive? We know the shot's not going to do anything. You're going to like drink fluids and rest and recover just like you do anything else. So what about to get a shot? Do you get a shot every time you get a runny nose? Of course not. Like what happened to us? Um,
well, I
it's crazy.
experienced that recently with some friends, and they said, well, so I had heard from someone else that some friends were sick, and so they went and had a COVID test and said, "Yep, I have COVID, so it's you might be exposed to it." And I go, it's just like anything else these days. This is always going to be around, and like you, I don't
Mhm.
know that I would go have a COVID test. You know, I I
Sure.
I would. In fact, I know I wouldn't
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
the flu is still around.
Mhm.
Remember back when we had COVID, there wasn't any
Mhm.
flu, right?
Oh, yeah. I
There
mean,
was like
exactly.
zero flu cases. And
It's not
and
like
every
information.
winter we have flu.
Yeah. Plus, the reliability of the test is really bad on top of that. Like 40, 50% of the time, it's going to be inaccurate anyway. But assuming it was accurate, what would you do with the information? Nothing. So why bother getting the information?
I agree. And also, you know what? If you don't feel good, stay home. Isolate yourself, stay home, just like you would if you had the flu.
Just,
You
just
don't
like
go
you
to
always
work
would.
and
Right.
spread. Like someone the other
You,
day said, I got a text and said, you know what? I think I have a cold. I'm not going to be there. And 2 days later, okay,
mhm.
I'm good now. And
Right.
that's what
Yeah.
we do, right? To be responsible for other people,
Mhm.
but also giving
Mhm.
our bodies time to rest and heal.
Sure, sure. It's like you ask people, do you get tested for, every virus that comes along? You get tested for, for the cold, the flu, the headache, the the measles, the mumps, rubella. Uh, what are you gonna? When does it stop? You have an
I
immune
don't
system.
know, but we are seeing a change in this revolution,
Mhm.
and one of the changes here, I'm going to post this story. I saw it today from the Daily Wire, and that is about detransitioners, and so the American Academy of Pediatrics is named in a bombshell detransitioner lawsuit. And so this young girl was an unfortunate victim of a collection of actors who prioritized politics and ideology
Mhm.
over children's safety, the lawsuit states. And she was 14 years old, and she's now 20,
Mhm.
and at 14 was having some issues, and her parents took her to a doctor, and the doctor determined you are the candidate for having, it's okay to have mental health issues. You're a teenager, you're going through you're
Mhm.
going through a lot of changes. And so Ayala is her name, and she was given a lot of treatments, and so she was taken down the path of the gender affirming medicalization rather than
Mhm.
addressing the true roots of her mental health problems.
Mhm.
And 6 months into testosterone treatment, she tried to commit suicide. That's not uncommon from what I've
Mhm.
read
Mhm.
and heard about. And
Mhm.
she stopped those treatments, and I'm proud of her for bringing speaking out. This is a very
Mhm.
difficult thing,
Sure.
for her to do.
Mhm.
And the lawsuit not only goes after the doctors who treated her, but also the
Mhm.
American Academy of Pediatrics, where
Mhm.
Rafferty and his colleagues worked to publish a now infamous policy statement advocating for aggressive gender treatments in children.
Mhm.
And lawyers for Ayala, or maybe it's Ayla, I'm not quite sure how you say her name, say the
Mhm.
policy statement laid the groundwork for an entire new model of treatment based on outright fraudulent
Mhm.
representations of scientific proof.
Mhm.
And so, those that have been through this, I'm very glad that there are many people that are speaking out, but bringing lawsuits to push back against this, because I don't think it's personally in the best interest of children at all.
It's 100% immoral. I mean, just look at it from the standpoint of we don't run experiments on children or pregnant women or women of childbearing age. You can look at the package insert of pretty much any drug, and it will tell you that this drug has not been tested in those categories because it's been considered immoral to test in those categories. And the only time you use a drug in people who fit those criteria is if they're in a life-threatening situation, where it's like the last resort alternative, right? This is completely immoral and wrong. I mean, to a minor, it's just unbelievable how low the medical profession has sunk in pursuit of the dollar. And make no mistake about it, this is all about the pursuit of the dollar. I mean, if you look at and I saw a video on this not long ago, but it totally makes sense. If you get somebody into this body chopping procedures and taking these drugs, that's a permanent income stream for the people who do this, because that person is going to constantly be coming back to get something rejiggered, get something fixed. That chop didn't work right. We had to do another surgery. Oh, those drugs don't work. We got to tweak it another way. And so these people are in for a lifetime, albeit a shortened lifetime, of these kinds of treatments. And it's a cash cow for these medical institutions that do it. That's why they're promoting it, which is just sick beyond belief. And there's just no way you should be doing that when you're underage. You should never do it, because that's the other piece. There's no data for it. That's the other thing. Again, in a data driven medical profession, which has always been up until it seems like 15 minutes ago, you had to have data to bring something new to the market. Now, apparently, you just have to like cry fire in a theater, and then suddenly everybody's supposed to yell, "How high can I jump?" And you just like write the prescription for them. It's nuts. Everybody's a guinea pig.
Yeah, we kind of have a lot of that going around right now. People being medical guinea pigs,
Right. Yeah. I mean,
you know?
which goes to show
And this
how
is
and
awful. This is children,
and the pressure they
But
put
if
on these
you,
parents. Have you heard some of the stories they tell these parents? If you don't do this, then they're going to commit suicide. Right? Would you rather have? What's the thing they say? Would you rather have them dead or alive? Kind of a thing. Would you have a dead straight person than an alive? Uh, name your LGBTQ transition thing, which is a straight up lie, because the treatment itself is deadly, as you just said from
yeah.
the statistics around suicide.
And yet, she says in this lawsuit that she had told her doctors that she was concerned about losing the ability to have
Mm-hmm.
children, but they
Mm-hmm.
put her on the treatments anyway without disclosing the potential harm of the drugs administered,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
those harms could have on the reproductive system.
Mm-hmm.
And so, her life has been changed permanently in a way that she uh, never
Mm-hmm.
never thought possible, or never necessarily wanted,
And,
given her young age,
and this is the thing, we're
14.
talking a permanent solution to a temporary problem, which is never a good idea. I mean, it's so wrong. Um, you can't believe they do it.
Yeah, Yeah, you can't. And so you are correct. It's about the dollar, and that's the sad truth to it. And so the lawsuit comes as the number of detransitioners who regret undergoing sex change treatments
Mm-hmm.
spike in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Nonprofit group Do No Harm published a detransitioner Bill of Rights earlier this month, laying out a legislative blueprint, blueprint for empowering victims to go after medical
Mm-hmm.
professionals who administer treatments and help with reversing the effects of gender transition surgeries. Even here in Oregon, where we're a sanctuary for transitioning, the your insurance in Oregon will not pay to detransition you. And that in itself, I think, is a crime, because if
Yeah.
you are wanting, this is about your mental well-being, your mental and physical well-being.
Mm-hmm.
And clearly, what something you do at 11 or 14, you might have regrets when you're 20, 22, and go,
Mm-hmm.
this isn't what I thought it was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, why wouldn't they cover you? That
So they
makes no sense
yeah.
to
So they paid to transition you, but they won't pay to detransition you. See, that's like
me. Yeah,
obscene, right? If you pay for one, you just pay for the other. You shouldn't pay for either. But that's a whole nother it's a whole nother story, right?
it
Um,
is. It is.
excuse me, I'm sorry.
That's okay. So, hey, what have you got on your list there, Don?
Yeah, well, so I thought I just came across the Washington D.C. episode. Have you all heard about that one? So the mayor in D.C. has suddenly determined that probably defunding the police might not have been a good idea. So let's rehire police. Good, so we can get a handle on this out of control crime. You can't even believe these people. I mean, the sheer chutzpah that they have. And the thing is, they never take responsibility. That's another thing associated with the left. You'll see. So what are here's the word use of the wordage. It's the policy environment has changed. You almost have to laugh. So basically, what you're indirectly saying is that we succumb to the rioting in the streets to get rid of police to do it. So we don't have any backbone to stand up to something we know is wrong. So because people are yelling and rioting in the streets, defund the police. We got rid of the police, even though we knew what would happen. And here we are, crime's completely out of control. You got huge swaths of the city where retailers have failed, like Target, Walmart, the usual suspects. And so now you've got a situation where an election's coming. Make no mistake about it. That's why they're doing it. So now they want to fix it by bringing back police. I what police officer would want that job would be my after that. I don't.
Right, right. When you have a governor or a mayor of a town that doesn't have the back of the police department and
Mhm,
just let it go in Washington, D.C., run rampant, when all of those buildings are covered in plywood and it says BLM spray painted, BLM headquarters,
mhm,
I'll tell you, I was in Washington, D.C., and saw a lot of that.
mhm,
And they own some of those streets, quite frankly. So now she says, oh no, now we want to backtrack that and
mhm.
fund the police. And, maybe that wasn't the right thing to do. Of course, she didn't use those words.
Well, their own constituents are now probably, I'm guessing, because these people read data like they look at they can see the same data anybody else can see, and they're losing votes or potential votes.
Yeah.
And the one fundamental thing that a government's responsible for doing is protecting the citizens. All that other stuff is like fluff and dressing. At the end of the day, the government's supposed to do two things: protect the citizens from each other and protect the citizens from foreign invasion. And obviously, we ain't doing either.
Well, boy, you got that right. You got
Uh,
that right. What is happening at the border? Today I heard it's 8 million people, and I'll bet you it's even more. But
yeah,
that's what the so-called media is saying. It's 8
yeah,
million people, and in our country, and it's awful. These are not people that are coming here because they like our country. In fact, they come here, they don't like it necessarily, but they like the benefits of our country.
So here's the thing. Even when you had traditional illegal immigration, and this is just, I don't have any data to back this up. This is just personal observation. You go back to the 80s, 90s. I was in Southern Cal when we had massive illegal immigration back then. People were basically seeking a better life. Who could blame them? I mean, if I was in Mexico, you bet your bottom dollar I'd be trying to do the same thing, right? Heck or high water, I'm trying to get to the United States. Um, and even now, my guess is you still have a huge percentage of people that that's the same reason. But what's different now, besides the borders completely wide open, which has never been this wide open, is you have a bunch of people
Yeah.
from countries other than Mexico or countries that aren't Western. Let's put it that Western civilizations we're talking about. So countries that don't share Judeo Christianity as the background. That's where I think the true danger comes in. So now we got people coming from other parts of the world. They go, of course, to Latin America because that's the easiest entry point, and mostly like men. So where are the families? So back in the 80s, 90s, whatever, that was like women and children along with everybody else coming, right? So now you got this other category of people. Now it doesn't take that many of them to make for a disaster. I mean, 80% of them could be fine, but it doesn't take very many. I mean, here's a statistic for you. I think I saw this, read this somewhere. In the average American city, there's one cop for every 15,000 citizens, right? What that tells
Hmm.
you is that people are mostly very well behaved. Because if people weren't, there's no way one cop could manage 15,000 people. But if we get into a situation
Yeah.
where we don't share the same moral concept, and if you don't believe that, look at what's happening in Israel right now. That's an example of people that are in their country operating outside the Judeo-Christian foundation. You get those kind of immigrants, you in like a whole heap of trouble. And we've never had that. I mean, even when Mexican immigration is out of control, you might call it, they share the same Judeo-Christian background. So you're generally not going to see people beheading women and children, for example. That's a next level problem that we've never had, but we're asking for it with this current administration.
Yeah, we are. And the other day I read a story that in El Salvador, the president of El Salvador, which is where the MS-13 gang originated from, has arrested 50,000 MS-13 gang
Mhm.
members. And I don't know that if it was just this year or during
Mhm.
his term of presidency,
Mhm.
but he said, you know what? The problem is here in El Salvador, we are all about law and order and safety,
Mhm.
public safety. So they're
Mhm.
cleaning up El Salvador. And I'll tell you what,
Mhm.
yeah, go just pass right on through El Salvador and get to America.
Yeah, I mean,
Go
yeah.
right, pass on through Central America and get up to the United States.
So how much of that can you take is the thing.
Yeah,
And you go back to the turn of the 19th century when Ellis Island and massive immigration. The big concern was all these Southern Europeans. And do they hold the same values? But at the end of the day, they still were Judeo-Christian, right? Yeah, there were problems when it came with
yes,
all of this stuff, right? A lot of poverty, blah blah.
yeah,
But they weren't slicing and dicing and eating each other, right? Um, You get to the 80s and 90s. Yeah, we had massive immigration and there's problems, overcrowding, blah, blah, blah. But again, they weren't blowing up schools and blowing up women and children. This thing here that this administration is encouraging, well, who knows where this leads? Um,
oh yeah. It's our border needs to be closed. And why can't we just impeach Biden just on the border? What is coming across our border? I read a thing, I think it was Texas filed another lawsuit against Biden's White House to stop the border agents from cutting the razor wire. I mean, hello, they shouldn't be doing any of that.
yeah, yeah. Well, the shame of it is what it boils down to is who's in control the branches of government. It's terrible to say that. It shouldn't matter which branch is in power. The law should.
No, it shouldn't.
But unfortunately, that's just where we are. And I think we all are smart enough to recognize that it ain't going to get enforced until, and it's not just Republicans, conservative Republicans. We all
Oh
know
yeah.
that there's certain kinds of Republicans that have no business in office also, who are willing to enforce the law, just uphold the Constitution. There's no need for additional laws. Just enforce the law we have.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. That's what it needs to be, is enforce the law on the books. I've always said that, the governor, whoever's elected, can't just choose to pick and choose which laws they're going to enforce or not. If the death penalty is on the table in a state, the governor should not have any right to set that
Mhm,
aside. If they want to pardon somebody, that's one
mhm,
thing. But
mhm,
to say, well, we're just not going to enforce that.
mhm. Right.
That's
Yeah.
not their right,
Right.
to do that. A pardon is their right, but it's not their right to say, well, we're just not going to enforce that part of the law. Or
Mhm,
a district attorney that gets
mhm,
elected and says, no,
mhm.
we won't be doing any of that.
See, that's called tyranny, Or a governor comes along and says, "I declare an emergency. Everybody wear masks. Everybody get a shot." That's called tyranny. I don't understand why people have such a hard time understanding that. Why do you have a state Congress and a state legislature that you vote for if you're not going to rely on them to make the laws? Why bother? Um,
Right. I mean, and yeah, I hear you. Exactly. That's exactly it. Just do elect them to, although, in Democrat controlled Oregon, the Democrat legislators, oh my gosh, the plethora of laws that they come
mhm,
up with. I mean, to have 6,000 bills, that they want to get passed, which is
mhm,
why we had a Senate walkout, which
mhm,
actually segues right into another story.
mhm,
We've got our GOP senators who walked out, but the voters, not in Umatilla County, but I don't think Umatilla County passed this. It may have, but I don't think so. Measure 113
mhm,
that says,
mhm,
if any of our legislators have 10 unexcused absences, they can't run for office again. Well,
mhm,
5 of the Republican lawmakers say they can't be barred from
mhm,
running for another term because they boycotted the Senate earlier this year. So
mhm,
now this is a case that is coming to the Oregon Supreme Court,
mhm,
and the Supreme Court in Oregon will decide the true meaning of Measure 113. And I'm glad that they're bringing this case to to the courts. It's Senator Tim Knopp, Daniel Bonham, Susan Weber, Dennis Linthicum, and Lynn Finley. They
mhm,
have all objected. They have filed a legal challenge
mhm,
to Griffin Valad's ruling. They argue that the convoluted wording of the measure contained a loophole that went unnoticed last year. That
mhm,
wording, they believe, allows them to be re-elected for one more term before penalties kick in.
mhm,
So, we'll see what happens. I still
mhm.
feel that it is unconstitutional because you are removing the people's choice,
Right.
right?
Absolutely.
From who we would like to be
Mhm,
elected or who we would like to
mhm.
represent us.
Sure.
And so therefore I feel that it's unconstitutional in that fashion.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, part of it being in that office is they get to make the decision whether to walk out or not. That's part of the legislative process. Um,
Well, it is, and we've had to do it. So apparently oral arguments are going to be set December 14th. And so the Supreme Court on Tuesday announced that it was going to accept the case and adopt a speedy timetable. So oral arguments are December 14th. Of course, May is the primary, and the filing deadline is in March. I don't know. I
mhm,
think, well, I want to say like March 14th, but don't
mhm.
hold me to that date. So keep fighting, guys and
That's the way we
gals.
go.
Yeah, senators, keep
Yeah.
fighting because we need to take this all the way and win this
Mhm,
case.
mhm,
But on the other side, we have those. There's a story here from the Malheur Enterprise. about Greg Smith. He's Representative Smith. He's actually happens to be my representative. And there's a story in here that Malheur County says Smith cost it nearly $70,000 and they want his company to pay up. And he is the former economic development director for Malheur County, his company. And also, so apparently the county wants nearly $70,000 for their attorney costs and a settlement payment made to resolve a lawsuit with the newspaper, the Malheur Enterprise, involving access to public records. And apparently to date, as the Greg Smith and company is not releasing their FOIA, their Freedom of Information Act paper records regarding, and I believe it's regarding the Reload Center. And, you know, he was paid, this company was paid $9,000 a month for his economic development contract, and another $6,000 for work on the Nissa shipping depot. That's this reload project.
Mm-hmm.
And actually that whole project is in the hole by millions. And he represented them for the county for quite a long time in this project. Mm-hmm. Something I will say, I believe that Greg Smith's company of economic development is in direct conflict with him being a sitting representative. And he has at one time represented 5 counties. I do believe it is 5 counties, being their economic development director. How do you represent 5 separate counties as their economic development director? And then which one's going to get the favored project?
Well, you would think that the laws would prevent you. What's that old thing about it? I know when I was in the military, it was about not just that you were doing something that was impropriety, but the appearance of impropriety. So if they even had the appearance, this clearly has the appearance. I mean, even if you were someone who had integrity, and I'm certainly not implying this guy does, you would know you're in a position where it could be construed that you could be sending business to certain places. And so you would like to recuse yourself or whatever it was, or get rid of those businesses or whatever, right? But this goes back to what we talked about before, though. The constitutional republic can only work if you have people of virtue, which goes back to, religious foundation. And increasingly, we have people getting into positions of power who don't have that. And I think you see that across the spectrum, whether you're talking state legislatures, state houses, federal heads of corporations. People are like, physicians, right? They have a basic lack of morality. I don't think the general citizens not reached that level of paganism, I'll call it, right? As these people who go for positions of power, it just seems to go along with it.
Yes, and and it's a shame. Here he is, a sitting representative. He didn't make the payment deadline of September 15th that was set by the county. Mm-hmm. And this was the 3rd time in the past year that the county has sought Smith's agreement to protect the county against costs for his company's actions. Mm-hmm. But he's going, I'm just not responsible. Sure. And to me, that's unethical. Mm-hmm. And he's not looking out for any constituents that he has in that mm-hmm. area, or for the county that hired him. Mm-hmm. And he's also not been forthright, to my knowledge, of what I've mm-hmm. read of previous articles, with the FOIA mm-hmm. requests mm-hmm. at all. And so here you have a county trying to recoup some costs, and a project, this Nissa project, is just mired in debt and delays, which mm-hmm. he then quit his role as the project manager in early 2023, and for this Nissa Reload project. And
Mhm.
that has been ongoing, I'm going to guess, about 4 years, maybe even more. If
Mhm.
I might be mistaken, but I think it's about
Mhm.
4 years. Um, and it is just, it's irresponsible. And
Uh,
it doesn't have a good look for other legislators, let alone
mhm.
him, to be operating in
Mhm.
that fashion.
Well, that little voice that the rest of us has that says, don't do certain things, these people don't have that voice. Or they have the ability to ignore it, right? What else
Yeah.
can you say?
Yeah, absolutely. So, anyway, that's I think I would hope he could do better, but
Mhm.
it's not looking that way.
Uh,
Well, hey, did you have something else there for us, Don?
I'm just looking at this. Let's see. Uh, I don't have anything else that I could think of at the moment, which is highly unusual. I'm looking at, I was
Well,
looking at what was happening in Israel, and it seems to be the usual thing there. So, um, nothing new there to really add to the mix, other than waiting to see how Israel is going to respond, um, which seems to have covered up all the news everywhere else in the globe. But we know there's lots of other things going on too. But yeah.
well, there is. And so one more I want to just bring to our audience that maybe you're not aware, but there is becoming pharmaceutical legal drugs
Mm, mhm,
scarcity to that which is a threat to health and national security.
mhm,
There, so I just posted a story from Epic Health that the drug scarcity is a threat to health and national security. And so they're incentivizing to bring drug manufacturings back home to the United States because
mhm,
of the vulnerabilities of them
mhm,
being manufactured and also the dependency on
mhm,
China for the
mhm.
the elements that it
Mhm.
takes to make these drugs. You know,
Okay.
it's amazing that China has become the essential drug manufacturer for us. And yet I know other drugs. When I was in Panama, spent a couple of years in Panama, and a physician there had said, you know,
Mhm,
there's some different drugs, and they have also generics. And he had actually said, don't buy the ones from this country or that
mhm,
country. Get the ones from
mhm,
America. You
mhm,
know, he says their ratio of
mhm,
being effective or true to what the original medication was. Let's
mhm,
say by antibiotics, right? Let's
mhm,
just pick one. Some antibiotic, let's say that it was manufactured originally in America.
mhm,
Well, if there was a generic, it could be off by like 20% either way,
Yeah, a lot
you
of
know,
people
up
don't
to.
realize that. You bring a great point. The only requirement is that it have the active ingredient, but there's lots of things that go into that drug besides the active ingredient. So you want the one that was actually tested by the original manufacturer. If it doesn't have that, then it's gonna the swing in terms of its effectiveness or ineffectiveness could be as much as 20% in either direction, which may not matter as much to you if you're talking about an aching toe or something. But if you're talking about a cardiovascular drug, you might care about that more. Right. Or an
Yes,
antipsychotic or that sort of thing, right?
absolutely, absolutely. I
Yeah.
had no idea.
Mhm,
He was a great physician in
mhm,
Panama, and actually went to
mhm,
medical school in America.
mhm. Yeah, and
Um,
the average citizen has no idea about this stuff. So what they don't tell you when you go to the pharmacy and the pharmacist urges you to switch to a generic, for example, the pharmacist is not telling you he makes a lot more money on the generic. So it's not because it's in your best interest to switch you to a generic. It might be, and it might not be. It might solely be financially. It may not be medically, but it's definitely in his best interest or her best interest or that pharmaceutical or that
well,
pharmacy
sure,
giant
that
that they
drug
work for.
costs less money for the pharmacy.
Sure, that's what they're not gonna tell you that. You think you saved a few bucks, and maybe you did, but in terms of its impact on your life, hey, you don't know that. So probably the saddest thing about this whole thing is where we're headed in terms of this medical pharmaco industrial complex is the physician no longer works for you. They work for whoever's paying their freight. And that so it's incumbent on you to be an educated consumer, just like you are with everything else. And so many of us become so, we go back to the, in our age generation, remember Marcus Welby, MD, right? Dr.
Right.
Welby, you can trust him, blah, blah. Those days are gone. You have to do your research and find your Marcus Welby, because most of them are not Dr. Marcus Welby anymore. And obviously, the same thing's happening to pretty much every industry like that. Teaching is another one, right?
Well, it is. It is.
You'd assume
Well,
the
hey, Don,
is looking out for it. It's not.
that's a good note to end on. Everybody should do their research on for physicians and pharmaceuticals, and making sure that you're getting have a physician that you trust,
Mhm.
and that you're getting the medications that you actually, need.
Mhm.
If it's it's
Mhm.
that was enlightening to me. I know when that physician in
Sure.
Panama had said
Mhm.
that, had quite a, we were renewing our medical
Mhm.
chest because
Mhm.
we had quite a medicine cabinet that we had to
Yep.
renew,
Mhm.
every few years for our
Mhm.
sailboat.
Mhm.
And so that's how that conversation came about. I've had no
Mhm.
idea until then.
Well, you only get one body, that's for sure, right?
That's
So,
exactly right. That's
yeah,
exactly right.
yeah.
Well, Don, thank you so much. It's a great to see you. Thank you for being on. And to everybody, if you would please share our message. And thanks for watching.
Thanks, Sonny. It's always great to see you. Bye, everybody.